Tonight on The Wrap, the PM hits out at one of the country's richest men after he gives Sky News his verdict on the government's migration policies.
The UK is being colonised. It's costing too much money. It'll cause. Well, yeah. The UK is being colonised by immigrants, really, isn't it?
The Prime Minister says the comments to us from the billionaire and one-time Labour backer Sir Jim Ratcliffe are offensive and wrong, and he should apologise. But Nigel Farage says Labour can't ignore the changes brought by mass migration. Also tonight, police in Canada name an 18-year-old born male and identifying as a woman as the attacker who shot dead 8 people at a school and at a home.
You have the power to change things, to hold these men accountable, and you're doing the opposite. You're protecting them.
This is so ridiculous.
Angry exchanges in the US Congress as Democrats accuse the Trump administration of a cover-up over Jeffrey Epstein. And
how dare he criticise us? We weren't the ones stuffing government with hypocrites and paedophile apologists.
the Prime Minister is accused of only caring about violence against women to save his own skin as he attempts to fend off more questions about his judgment over Lord Mandelson and Lord Doyle. Well, we discuss the day's biggest stories with Stephen Bush and Kate Ferguson. And a little later, we'll look at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers, including coverage of our exclusive interview with Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Well, hello, good evening. Kate, Stephen, welcome to both of you. We begin tonight with the Prime Minister's condemnation of the country's richest man, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, after he told Sky News that the UK has been colonised by immigrants who are draining resources from the state. Sir Keir Starmer says those comments are offensive and wrong. Is he right? Stephen?
Yes. I mean, look, the overwhelming majority of people who come to this country do so to work. Colonisation was a violent process in which people had their homes and land taken from them. The person who, only today I was in a care home, the person working in that care home is not colonising anyone. The person who brought my delivery order is not colonising anyone. People who work in the City of London or the NHS are not colonising anybody. It's, whatever you think about the right level of immigration, someone coming to work legally in the United Kingdom is not the same as someone invading another country, seizing their assets, and in some cases, in the case of colonisation, murdering them to steal what they have.
Kate?
I don't like the word colonisation in this context, but I think he's raising an issue which many of your viewers, I know a lot of my readers are worried about, which is the level of migration. We had migration hit nearly 1 million just a few years ago. This is one of the top topics people are talking about at home, one of their top concerns. So he's raising an important issue. Also bleeds into this idea of social cohesion, but I don't love the word colonisation in this context. OK, well, we will bring you, of course, more of the reaction that is coming in just a moment. First, let's get more of a sense of what Sir Jim had to say in an exclusive interview with our economics editor, Ed Conway.
If you really want to deal with the major issues of immigration, with people opting to take benefits rather than working for a living, if you want to deal with that, then you're going to have to do some things which are unpopular. And show some courage.
And has this government done that?
No, I think they I don't know whether it's just the apparatus that hasn't allowed Keir to do it, or he's maybe too nice. He's a nice. I mean, I know Keir. He's a nice man. I like him, but it's a tough job, and I think you have to do some difficult things with the UK to get it back on track, because at the moment, I don't think the economy is in a good... You can't afford... you can't have an economy with 9 million people on benefits and huge levels of immigrants coming in. I mean, the UK is being colonised. It's costing too much money. It will cause...
It's been colonised? It'll cause...
Well, the UK is being colonised by immigrants, really, isn't it? I mean, the population of the UK was 58 million in 2020. Now it's 70 million. That's 12 million people.
You met recently with Nigel Farage, didn't you?
I did.
Do you think that they would be a good government if they were to win the next election?
I think Nigel is an intelligent man, and I think he's got good intentions, but in a way you could say exactly the same about Keir when Keir came in. But, I think it needs somebody who's prepared to be unpopular for a period of time to get the big issues sorted out, would be my view.
Well, in that interview, Sir Jim Ratcliffe said that the population of the UK was 58 million in 2020 and is now 70 million. According to the Office for National Statistics, the population in 2020 was 67 million. It was 58.9 million back in the year 2000. Well, tonight the Prime Minister has weighed in on what Sir Jim told Ed Conway. Sir Keir Starmer says the comments are offensive and wrong. Britain, he said, is a proud, tolerant and diverse country. Jim Ratcliffe should apologise. But Reform UK leader Nigel Farage has this evening, not surprisingly, taken a different view, saying the country has undergone unprecedented mass immigration that has changed the character of many areas in the country. Labour may try and ignore that, but Reform won't. Well, our chief political correspondent, John Craig, has joined us. First of all, we're starting to see, clear blue water between the politics of this, Stephen. Is this a great dividing line, do you think, for any future election we have?
Yes, I think it is. So Tony Blair, actually about a decade ago this year, gave a speech to the Trades Union Congress where he said that politics was no longer about left v right, but open versus closed. Were you supportive of globalisation, immigration, free markets, or were you opposed to them? Now, Keir Starmer's resisted that divide for a long time. They had this idea that you could have a middle position between those two. But I think what we're now starting to see is the Labour Party realising that you have to, one way or the other, you can either be on the side of globalisation, free market, immigration, or you can be against them, but you can't try and occupy a little bit of this, a little bit of that, the position that they were trying to occupy for their first 18 months in government. Well,
we're going to hear from Lisa Nandy in just a moment from you, John. But, Kate, first of all, you've expressed already how important this is to your readers, to the people of Britain. Is Keir Starmer now, does he have to tackle this in a more head-on way, do you think, as part of his reset with his survival mode?
Well, I think there's two things that Keir Starmer has to show that he can tackle in terms of the borders. One is getting net migration, normal immigration down. Actually, it's already coming down a lot, so I suspect that will sort itself out in a way. The other thing is tackling illegal migration, often conflated. This is this idea of you've got to stop the boats. Look, this speaks to a point about fairness in our country, and I think that will be where Keir Starmer really needs to prove he can make a difference, tackling illegal immigration, making sure it doesn't look like people are jumping the queue, are allowed to stay here when they don't kind of pass the test, when they don't follow the right rules to be allowed to stay here.
I mean, strong words tonight. Colonisation, it's offensive, it's divisive, John. What reaction are you getting? And was the Prime Minister right to come out, do you think, so strongly and speak to, a very well-known individual in this way?
It does sound like the language of Reform UK. And, in fact, in that interview, we heard Sir Jim say he'd met Nigel Farage recently. Now, it's worth pointing out, as well as the Keir Starmer message tonight, Number 10 have said, again, Mr. Jim Ratcliffe should immediately apologise. And then a spokesperson has said, his offensive remarks are wrong and play into the hands of those who want to divide our country. Clearly, an attack on Reform UK there without even mentioning them. Now, you've corrected the figures already. I mean, that 9 million, I think he's probably thinking about the number of working-age people who are on benefits there. But, I mean, a lot of people will point out, well, hold on a minute, at the Manchester United-West Ham game the other night, there were only 3 English players on the pitch, the rest of them from all sorts of nations. Apparently, according to our sports correspondent, Rob Harris, Manchester United have got players from more than 12 nationalities around the world. He's also at odds with Manchester United's own website, where they talk about Manchester being a city that celebrates immigration. The Premier League talks about how it's become a league of nations on the pitch. But the background is that, of course, he's a big Brexiteer. And he said in an interview with Sky News in 2024, it didn't turn out how people anticipated. Now, we've heard from Sir Keir. Lisa Nandy, the Culture Secretary, whose brief, of course, includes sport, was rather more nuanced than the Prime Minister when she appeared on the Politics Hub here on Sky News tonight, interviewed by Matt Barbette.
When it comes to immigration, I think that people deserve an immigration system that they can trust. I think most people are very compassionate, and where people need safety and security, they expect Britain to play our part, and we'll give a warm welcome to people who need to be here.
Lisa Nandy there. Well, meanwhile, plenty of reaction, as you might expect, from the world of football. Sir Jim, of course, co-owner of Manchester United. The football charity Kick It Out said Sir Jim Ratcliffe's comments are disgraceful and deeply divisive at a time when football does so much to bring communities together. That's their statement this evening. Plenty more that they had to say. Show Racism the Red Card said it was deeply concerned by Sir Jim's comments. It said language of this kind echoes narratives that have historically been used to stigmatise migrant communities, fuel division and legitimise hostility towards minority groups. Two of the statements there as well. Certainly the comments are already in the newspapers, but, I mean, football is an incredibly, multicultural event, is it not? And there'll be football fans listening to that who'll be going, hold on a minute, is he talking about me here?
Yeah, I mean, look, the Premier League is the example of the strength of immigration, although, personally, look, if Jim Ratcliffe wants to start chalking off goals and points won by Manchester United's immigrant players, I, for one, would quite like it if the game at the Emirates and Mbeumo's goal hadn't counted. So, yeah, look, but I think lots of people in the stands will go like, wait, are you talking about my grandparents? Are you talking about the players in front of it? But this is always the issue about the politics of immigration. People don't like the headline numbers, but as we see with the Windrush scandal, as we see with various stories down the year, people then don't like, oh, well, I didn't mean that immigrant. I didn't mean the immigrant looking after my grandmother. I didn't mean the immigrant who, works for me in the NHS. And this is, I think, the thing which is difficult for all governments, is how do you thread that line between giving people that sense of control, particularly that control over illegal immigration, while also providing them the first-class services. No one, when they vote for lower immigration, is voting for the England team to become less successful. They don't want Bukayo Saka to go home. They don't want the NHS to have waiting lists to get even longer, and they don't want the City of London to be less competitive. And so I think that is one of the many things Jim Ratcliffe has got wrong, although I must admit I do quite enjoy his tenure of Manchester United, and as someone who doesn't like that football team, long may it continue. Yeah,
exactly. Didn't quite get 5 wins in that man cutting his hair, though, did you? Official Manchester United Muslim Supporters Club, the term colonised is not neutral. It echoes language frequently used in far-right narratives that frame migrants as invaders and demographic threats. The problem, as you said, is immigration's already coming down. Policies that were brought in under the Conservatives, in fact, until people realised about the care sector and the NHS as well, which is a big employer. Where else do you get growth from if you do not allow migration in? That's another big argument, is it? Just as the Lib Dems want to hive off part of the Treasury as a growth unit. But is it an important factor in growth, do you think, or does that not stop people's view that enough is enough for some people?
I think it's maybe a factor that they've leaned on very heavily at the OBR and amongst governments for too long. So it's this idea that if we just kind of keep bringing more immigrants over, we could get this sluggish economy growth going a little bit. It's just about kind of expanding numbers. But what that's done is highlight the kind of problems with our economy, which is it's not very productive, and that and there is a question about how you count migration in terms of the productivity of the economy. So obviously people come over and work, that can be scored as productive, as something good for the economy, but also you're talking about what it costs in housing, in services, in population. Can I just say something a bit broader, though, on his comments, which is, I think, what his point is going to be lost in his language, which is where, look, he's not a politician, he's made he's put a kind of toe in the water here and he's not chosen the best language. But he's making 2 points in that interview that I heard. One, immigration he thinks is too high, and he thinks lots of people think that. Well, I guess lots of people do think that, actually. And second, that there's a problem in our country in terms of worklessness, people being out of work, on benefits of working age. And we know that being in a job is the best thing for your well-being, your happiness and your future prospects. And those are two things that every Prime Minister, by the way, should be grappling with and trying to sort out.
So to John, then, stop the boat strategy is not working, one in, one out's not working, parts of the Labour Party won't allow any welfare reforms to get people back into work. So what do they do?
Well, the Prime Minister is, in recent weeks, being tougher and tougher with Reform UK. Today, he attacked Robert Jenrick for those remarks in Birmingham when Mr Jenrick was, I think, recorded saying you don't see any white faces in an area of Birmingham. So the Prime Minister is very keen, I think, to pick a fight, particularly with Reform UK, not so much with the Tories, I don't think, on the racism issue. And that's why Number 10 are saying it plays into the hands of those who want to divide our country. And that is a clear reference to Reform UK.
OK, it's an interesting discussion, as you say. He certainly, you know, brought into the focus, again, the issue of migration, legal or otherwise. Well, certainly the comments from Sir Jim Ratcliffe to Sky News to Ed Conway are on the front of the Express, with him also saying new arrivals to Britain are costing too much money. We will bring you that and all the front pages at 10:30, so stay tuned for that. Well, let's go to Canada now, where police have tonight released more details about the person who shot dead 8 people at a school and at a home before taking their own life. They say they don't know the motive of the suspect, who was 18, born male, identified as female. Sky's John Sparks has more.
It is the last thing you'd expect in small-town Canada. A mass shooting at the local high school in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. Here students run for cover after a terrifying 2-hour ordeal. Classroom doors barricaded with desks and chairs and bookshelves. 6 people were killed at the secondary school in Tumbler Ridge. The bodies of 5 were discovered in the library. Another was found in the stairwell. The majority were children. The body of the shooter was also found with self-inflicted wounds.
We understand the community has questions, and we understand they want to know the motive behind this tragic incident. We do believe the suspect acted alone, and there are currently no other outstanding suspects.
The police said the suspect was an 18-year-old school dropout called Jessie Van Rootselaar. She was a transgender woman beginning her transition 6 years ago. Before Van Rootselaar entered the high school, she killed her mother and her stepbrother at the family home.
Police had attended that residence on multiple occasions over the past several years, dealing with concerns of mental health with respect to our suspect. I can say that on different occasions, the suspect was apprehended for assessment and following.
So apprehended under the Mental Health Act?
Yes.
Canadians associate mass shooting incidents with their neighbours to the south, and the country's Prime Minister appeared visibly moved.
We will get through this, we will learn from this, but right now it's a time to come together, as Canadians always do in these situations, these terrible situations, to support each other, to mourn together, and to grow together.
Members of the local police detachment were quick to the scene, arriving 2 minutes after the first call, but they didn't prevent this tragedy. They later removed a rifle and a handgun from the school. The victims haven't been identified, but the children were aged between 12 and 13 years old. A teacher was also killed. Difficult questions will follow as a small community and the nation begin to grieve. John Sparks, Sky News.
Well, Kate, as we heard there from John Sparks, a really, really small community, and certainly the Royal Canadian Mounted Police suggested that there had been multiple call-outs at home related to their mental health.
Yeah, I mean, this is just such... I mean, obviously, it seems kind of mundane to say this is an incredibly sad, tragic story, but I was struck earlier when I was listening to somebody from that town on the radio. I think it's like a few thousand people living there. I think it's less than 200 people at this school. Everyone knows everyone. To be one of those awful massacres where everyone will know a victim or be affected by it, probably lots of people know the alleged perpetrator. So you just have to really feel for them in that situation.
There were some questions about why the shooter was identified as female at the beginning, with no mention of transgenderism. It is something that has been seized on by certain elements of the Republican Party in the pre-run to the election, those who are anti-trans issue and want, you know, sport, for example, trans rights not to be included as part of that. Is that an issue, do you think, here? Or should it just be dealt with on the facts as they are?
So I think it is an issue in this specific case because, so, look, the overwhelming majority of people obviously do not become what is called in the jargon spree killers, i.e. people who go and shoot up a school or do violence. But we know that the overwhelming majority of people who commit violent crimes are male. obviously, most males
I think the figures are 98%. In the US, I'm talking about, not Canada.
And I think in the United Kingdom, it's something like 92%. And now, obviously, of those males, almost all of them are just males like me, right? I'm not trans, obviously. But I think it is problematic if we want to understand why people kill. And if we don't accurately measure who the people who are doing this are, then I think that is problematic. That doesn't mean you shouldn't respect someone's own beliefs about their own body and their own identity. This person, obviously, we should bury them and name them as they would wish to be named. But when we want to understand why this violence happens, we do have to understand it's not violence by people who, identify as men. It's violence committed by males. And we have to be honest about this. Us men are responsible for the overwhelming majority of crimes, murders, etc. And if we want to live in a crime-free world, which I think we should all want to, we have to start with that truth, which is the truth of male violence. Not man-identifying violence, but male violence.
OK, and certainly Mark Carney today suggesting that everybody deeply, deeply affected by this in the community, some really devastating youngsters who've lost their lives in this incident. Well, now to Washington, where there have been shouting matches and extraordinary allegations in Congress as Democrats accuse the Trump administration of a cover-up over the Epstein files. We'll take a look at this then from our US correspondent, James Matthews.
So help you God.
I do.
From America's top prosecutor, it was pure theatre.
I'm going to answer the question. You, Mr. Nadler, were one of the leads on the impeachment. Only 2 people voted against it, and you were one of them, hypocrite.
Pam Bondi came in punching. She leads Donald Trump's Department of Justice. And this was an appearance before the Judiciary Committee, a job review. She has a poor rating with survivors of Jeffrey Epstein.
It's good to see you.
They made their feelings clear in a news conference beforehand.
The people who have harmed us, they are hidden, while survivors have been exposed.
The people who were supposed to protect us instead shielded abusers and re-traumatized survivors.
So I ask you all to stand behind us and demand accountability for our government, because we certainly are going to.
We stand here today, united and strong, and we are asking for something simple. Treat us like human beings.
Those same survivors were inside for the committee hearing over Pam Bondi's shoulder. Not that she looked back.
The harm that it has done to the survivors who are standing right behind you and are waiting for you to turn to them and apologize for what your Department of Justice has done.
Members get to ask the questions, the witness gets to answer in the way they want to answer. The Attorney General can
That's
respond.
not accurate, Mr. Chairman.
Because she doesn't like the answer.
Epstein was top of the agenda. Survivors and alleged perpetrators.
I find it absolutely despicable that you sought to protect Epstein's clients, like former Prince Andrew.
Given the evidence, Pam Bondi was asked, why had she ruled out prosecutions?
Please put the photos back up. These 2 photos staring you in the face are evidence of a crime and more than enough evidence to predicate an investigation against former Prince Andrew.
There were questions for the royals, inside the room and outside.
Family's reputation is on the line right now. And so I hope they do the right thing by letting authorities hold Andrew accountable for anything he did.
The Epstein story has a wide cast of characters. Howard Lutnick, among others, the Commerce Secretary, who said he was never in the room with Jeffrey Epstein after 2005. But the files show they were in business together as recently as 2014. Nancy Mace turned out to support survivors on Capitol Hill. What was her view as a fellow Republican? Should Howard Lutnick resign?
Going to lunch with someone isn't a reason for resignation.
He was in business with Jeffrey Epstein long after he said that he was.
Right. Again, not telling the truth isn't a reason to fire people. But however, I think you can question someone's judgment. Going to a pedophile island with your children to go have lunch with a convicted pedophile, I would never do that as a mother.
He appears to have lied about. He appears to have lied about his association with Jeffrey Epstein.
I mean, you can lie and still have a job, right? But
if you lie, you're part of the cover-up, surely.
I'm not going to politicize this, okay?
You're so obsessed with, you
Okay,
don't, do you?
I'm going to teach you the rules again. You're the Attorney General of the United States. We have rules here.
You're obsessed with him.
You're the Attorney General of the United States.
With
And the rules.
obsessed with Donald Trump. You have Trump derangement syndrome.
This was a matter most serious, reduced to political knockabout. It was a reflection of how this country does justice now.
The hearing is adjourned.
It's different and divisive. James Matthews, Sky News in Washington.
OK, that descended into an absolute shouting match, did it not? I mean, do you think Donald Trump is just sitting there absolutely furious that, one, it is his administration that is releasing this information, whether there's errors that have been made, and yet they are the very same people who are being accused of a cover-up here? Or do you think there is a cover-up?
I mean, it is kind of wild, isn't it? Because, as you say, there's been calls to release these files for years and years, and he is the one dumping them out. But he's also getting a lot of the blowback. But when I watched that piece that we just saw, what I just think is this is just turning into a slagging match between politicians. And then I see victims in the background barely getting a look in. And I do really wonder, you know, with the publication of all of this material, thousands and thousands, millions of pages of documents, where's the live police investigation? Where are the men in the dock for this? You know, we know this was more than Jeffrey. We know it was more than Ghislaine. Yet those women are still left there without justice. So, you know, look, it's fine for politicians to have to take to account for their relationship with Jeffrey Epstein over the years, particularly subsequent to his conviction, but what happens for those women, those victims? And I just think that I can't see any movement happening there, and that's just a depressing fact.
Yes, we know that the victims, and I've spoken to some who have compiled their own list. We know that some on Capitol Hill, US politicians, have now said out loud the names of those alleged co-conspirators, and yet there seems no effort or indication that there will be any case reopened about any of this.
Yeah, and I think it is both depressing and corrosive, and also, I think, quite a damning reflection on the state of American society. Quite rightly, Peter Mandelson is facing his moment for being friends with him afterwards. And that's true across the whole of Europe. If you are named in the Epstein files and you are a European, whether in politics and business, you are quite rightly being held accountable. And it feels, when you look over at the United States, whether you are a senior figure in a university, a senior figure in a political party, there's basically no accountability. And I just think that's depressing and chilling and a worrying reflection on a country which has, I think, been a huge force for good and inspiration in the world till relatively recently.
Just a quick update on our top story, which is Ed Davey, the Liberal Democrat leader, has also now given his view about what we heard to Ed Conway about Jim Ratcliffe. Totally wrong, totally out of step with British values. He should apologise now. So yet more calls for Jim Ratcliffe to apologise for the use of his language in that interview with our economics editor, Ed Conway. Well, plenty more still to come on The Wrap. Has the Prime Minister got a woman problem? We will take a look at his latest woes on the front page of The Guardian and elsewhere, as well as the rest, of course, of the front pages of the newspapers.
the best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Big Sky News journalist. Ed Conway. Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Well, it's time now to see what is making the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers. Let us kick off with the Daily Express, and following that Sky News exclusive, the Express leading on Sir Jim Ratcliffe's comments that the UK is being colonised by immigrants. The Star also leads on that, describing the racism storm that has erupted following Sir Jim's comments. As does the Mirror, describing his words as shameful and saying there's fury at the Man United co-owner's choice of words. The Guardian, in the meantime, leading on demands from female Labour MPs for Sir Keir Starmer to appoint a senior woman as his de facto deputy to oversee a culture change in Downing Street. That is also the main story for the Daily Mail, as the Prime Minister is accused of running a number 10 boys' club. The Times also leads on the Prime Minister focusing on the controversy around his appointment of Lord Doyle to the House of Lords. The Telegraph claims Labour is keen for closer ties with Europe, with the Chancellor Rachel Reeves saying the government will be willing to cede more powers to Brussels in exchange for a better economic deal. The Financial Times reports that shares in Britain's biggest wealth management companies fell over concerns about a new AI investment tool. And the Metro aptly leading on a prolific train fare dodger who has avoided jail despite not paying for at least, wait for it, £3,600 worth of journeys over 2 years. Well, let's bring in our guests. And actually, Stephen, given, the number of newspapers have gone with Manu Jim's racism storm, as the Daily Star puts it, why has this touched a nerve, do you think, for people?
I think for a couple of reasons. Firstly, because, look, the period of the 18 months since Labour took office have been a period in which race relations in this country have taken a backward step of a kind that we haven't seen for decades, right? The language people use about ethnic minority Britons, then you have people suggesting that Rishi Sunak, for example, one of the most English people you can, is not a proper English person. Then we have in the Galton and Denton by-election for Reform a candidate who suggested that people who have black or brown skin are somehow not automatic. Our Englishness is somehow suspect. Then some members of the England team are, then we should. I think that what this, and I think one of the reasons why this has been such a lively use of language is, look, it's one thing to have concerns about the level of people coming into the country, but to use the language of colonisation, which was a violent process in which people lost their lives, their homes, their liberty, to compare people legally coming to a country to work to that is obviously inflammatory language, and I think it really touches the deep-seated anxiety many ethnic minorities have about the trajectory of politics at the moment and just the language that has been used and has become normalised in British politics. Things that would never have been said without being condemned by the whole of the political spectrum when the Conservatives were in office have now become a complete free-for-all.
Full list of candidates, obviously, on the Galton by-election on our website, if you want to take a look at that. The Daily Star picks up on they are draining resources from the state line from Sir Jim Ratcliffe. He was also making the point, though, wasn't he, about people on benefits as well, the sort of the worklessness element of this. So that's 2 points being made, effectively saying both are a drain on UK PLC.
Well, I think if you speak to anybody in government, they will agree that you've got to tackle this worklessness crisis. So this is people of working age who are on benefits, often signed off on sickness benefits. And people at home might think, oh, gosh, you sound so harsh, like they might be ill and you're saying they should get back to work. But I would just say one thing, that lots of people are being signed off, but we know that the best thing for your health, for your well-being and for your overall life chances is to be in work. So just to disentangle these two things he said, this kind of benefits Britain, you need to kind of tackle this welfare dependency or this emerging problem of probably people being signed off sick a bit too often and for too long. I think everyone agrees you've got to tackle that. On this immigration point, he's just, well, not to use a football analogy, but he's scored an own goal here by using very clumsy language, I think. But he's speaking to an anxiety about high migration. It has been incredibly high, nearly 1 million a couple of years ago. Now, that is historic levels. That's the biggest in history in this country. But also that anxiety about illegal migration and what is fair. So actually, you know, look, I suspect he's going to get a right kicking over the coming days about his choice of language. We've already seen it splashed across the papers. But the gritty problem of restoring trust in borders and an immigration scheme that seemed to work and be fair is one I'm afraid every government's going to have to grapple with.
Yeah, and the newspapers picking up different things. The Daily Mirror, for example, using the word shameful, outrage at the Premier League boss. I mean, it's because of his role at Man U as well, because he's really upset. All of those anti-racism campaigners in football who've been working, to be fair, for decades against language like this in the world of football, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, look, in terms of the story of why the United Kingdom is one of the most, I think actually the most successful multi-ethnic society in the world, a big part of that is the work that football has done to render racism unacceptable. And also, of course, for many of us, when we think of a famous ethnic minority person or an ethnic minority person we think of as a hero, as an Arsenal fan, of course, I think of Ian Wright, I think of Bukayo Saka, or I think of, you know, my favourite French immigrant, Thierry Henry, right? But I think football has been so important in making us a more tolerant country. And, of course, that's because of the work of individual footballers and organisations of the kind which have called out Jim Ratcliffe. And, of course, Manchester United themselves have got a very proud history of, you know, players. You know, is Jim Ratcliffe claiming that he thinks Marcus Rashford is colonising the United Kingdom? Does he think that Brian Mbeumo is colonising the United Kingdom? It's obviously not an OK way to talk about his own players, although, of course, driving down the value of their own players is one of the things that Manchester United has done very well.
And we'll just see the Daily Express as well, just finally. UK colonised by migrants, claims the United chief. So Jim Ratcliffe says new arrivals to Britain are costing too much money, speaking really to their readers there, aren't they? We know the Express is concerned about the issue of migration. But we're going to move on, if you don't mind, to the politics of the day, which is Sir Keir Starmer. The Guardian, first of all, we know that he spoke to the Women's Parliamentary Labour Party tonight. Select a female deputy to end the boys' club in number 10. Is this idea actually catching on? And how many deputies can you actually have?
Yeah, we'll just count through them because Keir Starmer's got 2 deputies at the moment. Deputy Labour leader, directly elected by members, that's Lucy Powell, obviously a woman, and Deputy PM is David Lammy. Look, there's going to be a lot of discussion over the coming days, and there is on these front pages, about does Keir Starmer have a woman problem? Does number 10 need to be kind of more feminised?
Well, what do you think the answer is to that?
Well, I was going to say the answer to that, I think, is he has a woman problem because the women in his party says there is one. So if you're turning up at Labour Women's PLP and they're all saying, look, there's misogynistic briefings, we think it's a bit of a toxic culture at number 10, we're not happy with how things have been going, then that is something clearly Keir Starmer has to address. Whether or not he might think that's fair, whether or not even some of his advisers might think that's a fair representation.
Are you suggesting it's his advisers, not him? Is that
well, I think the criticism is like not of him as an individual necessarily, it's of the whole the way that his government has operated. But I think if you're Keir Starmer and you've got Lisa Nandy doing broadcast tonight, as she was, and she's saying she's been victim of misogynistic briefings, then clearly, given the torrid week he has had, this is going to be something he needs to address. But, you know, can I just take one issue with this Harriet Harman proposal, which is that he needs another de facto deputy that is there kind of purely for women's issues almost. And I don't know how you feel, but I do, as a kind of relatively senior woman in my own profession, don't love it when women are kind of shunted into that women's role. Oh, you're there to be the mouthpiece of all women. I would much prefer us to be just treated as equals and willing and able and respected to do that job. So I always get cautious and nervous about that kind of siloed position that women can sometimes be dumped in.
Yes, Daily Mail as well. Labour women's fury of a second paedophile crisis. Starmer's judgment savaged over another. Labour peers' ties to a sex offender. It's this idea of, you know, violence against women and girls as part of the issue here, is it not? So that's the, you know, the tricky pointer for him as, you know, sharpening the claws on this effectively.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Labour Party under Keir Starmer clearly does have a problem of too many bros, to use the phrase that a female Labour MP used, too many bros at the heart of government. Because when you have a situation where you don't successfully anticipate, then people are not going to be relaxed about Labour peers who have had close friendships with convicted paedophiles. You're clearly getting something wrong. I think, look, when you are even allowing for the fact the Labour Party doesn't win very many elections, so of course they're going to be trailing in the number of prime ministers. But when you have a situation where the Conservatives have had 3 women prime ministers and the Labour Party have had 0, I think it is fairly obvious that there is something in the culture of the Labour Party that is not wholly welcoming to women. And I think when we look at some
even though they've had 2 deputy leaders in a row, Angela Rayner and now Lucy
But I mean,
Powell.
like, deputy leader, what even is that? Like, we all know... Yeah, look, we all know that it's a consolation prize. And I actually suspect one of the problems for the Labour Party, if you wanted to change their rule book to fix the issue they have, you'd probably say, look, let's get rid of this deputy post, because it becomes a thing that talented women, you know, get shunted into this deputy role.
I totally agree with that, actually.
Yeah, it's a really good way to get rid of talented women in your workforce. Oh, don't worry, you can be deputy.
You can be deputy,
yeah,
classic.
Yeah, like, but I think, yeah, look, there are lots of talented women in the Labour Party and there are lots of men in the Labour Party who don't have this problem, but I do think we have had, for the past 18 months, a really toxic boys' club in Downing Street, which has been, you know, indifferent to these issues, which is why they've ended up mired in these scandals, has been indifferent to the rise of racism, as we discussed earlier, and I think it does need to be tackled. I'm not convinced Harriet Harman's got quite the right idea, but she's barking up the right tree.
Well, they focus on Lord Mandelson and then Lord Doyle as well, and the vetting procedure for those who are made parliamentarians for life, as many people have pointed out today, led Kemi Badenoch today, as the Metro's quoting, to suggest that the Prime Minister is hiring paedophile apologists. Let's listen to that moment in PMQs.
The Prime Minister, you know, sometimes likes to claim, as he just did, that he cares about violence against women. The truth is, he only cares about the victims when he's trying to save his own skin. They can shake their heads. We saw it with grooming gangs. We saw it with Mandelson. And now we see it with Doyle. Isn't that what a former prosecutor would call an established pattern of behaviour?
I'm going to take no lectures from the Tories in standards in public life. She defended Partygate for months and months and months. And even now she says it was overblown.
Nobody buys it, Mr. Speaker. Not even the Labour women, because they know he always puts the Downing Street Boys Club first. And how dare he criticise us? We weren't the ones stuffing government with hypocrites and paedophile apologists. The Prime Minister is now telling everyone that he's never lost a fight. It's because he won't step into the ring. He's never lost a fight. He's walked away from welfare reform. He won't stand up to the unions. He won't stand up to China. He can't even stand up to Mauritius. He's had, Mr. Speaker, he's had 3 cabinet secretaries, 4 chiefs of staff, 5 director of communications in just 18 months.
And both for you, Kate?
Well, when I was in PMQs watching that, I thought that Kemi did a really good job in landing her line. But I want to say, Keir Starmer didn't have an answer for it, which is why he didn't answer it. He just went on the attack on Partygate. And he can't answer these allegations about why they didn't do more vetting and why he didn't follow up on these warnings. And that really does speak to him. The buck stops with him there.
Yeah, look, the big picture is we all know that what happened is Keir Starmer outsourced his judgment on many political issues to someone else. And it turns out that the person he outsourced his judgment to was bad. And exactly as Kate says, well, it doesn't matter if he outsourced it, he's still the one in charge. So he ultimately can't answer the question. I'm not convinced that Kemi Badenoch's tone or approach is working that well for her, which is why she's still 3rd in most of the polls. But the reason why Keir Starmer couldn't answer the question is he doesn't have a good answer.
Exactly. You don't think that PMs are just simply too busy to read everything, and outsourcing should actually be legitimised as a thing to do? Just very quickly. I mean, it's just my personal thought, but how anybody can read everything is, like, beyond me.
Well, no one should read anything. That would be a terrible idea for a PM. But you have to be interested in everything, from policy to appointments to your relationship to your backbenchers to international relations. You need to have an interest and an overview in everything.
OK, and you're suggesting he's been detached. Is that what? Is that?
I think that's fair.
Or abroad, one or the other. Let's move on to a story which is inside the Times now. Labour is introducing the idea that foreign donors would be banned from giving money to political parties in Britain unless they make enough money actually in the UK, suggesting under the Elections Bill, donations from companies will be capped at 2 years of revenue, with shell companies prevented from funneling large sums of money to parties and candidates. Does this sound like a good idea to you, do you think? Is it part of the clean-up of politics?
So I think it is a good idea. I think it's actually separate from the clean-up of politics, which is that we've entered an era of hybrid warfare, right, where, look, yes, we do not have physical troops at war with Russia, but, you know, the reason why we have why we're the #2 victim of cyber attacks in this country after the United States is because we have enemies abroad which wish to attack us, and one of the ways they want to attack us is through our democracy. So making sure that donations to our political parties come from people who are genuinely part of British society, I think is a good step. The cleaning up of politics is very different because, look, obviously, look, we're all British citizens, but we shouldn't be able to buy favours by giving donations. But that's a different issue to this, where we've got to make sure that our enemies and opponents overseas aren't able to undermine our democracy. And so I think it's the right step, it's the right idea. I think the government's perhaps been too slow to tackle it, but it's a real problem that should unite, I think, everyone in politics.
I mean, it just strikes me as such a different picture to America, where so much money is spent in, you know, political campaigning or ballroom building, as it turns out, funded by private donors. You know, we are worlds away from anywhere near what they go through. Are we po-faced in many of these matters, do you think?
Well, I was just remembering when I first heard about this policy, and it was obviously, I think, when Elon Musk was rumoured to going to be given that £1 million donation to Reform. Never happened because they fell out. But I think that's really part of this policy, might be about cleaning up transparency. I think some of it was about reacting to what was looked to be a very big donation to Reform. I mean, I think I'm glad that our politics isn't as awash with cash as it is in America, which is kind of like on a kind of grotesque level. So, yeah, I mean, it is important to have transparency, and people don't want foreign states or countries really intervening with our politics.
Let's just show you the picture story on the front page of the Financial Times, which is a Ukrainian who wears a helmet in memory of the Ukrainian athletes who have died in the war during the men's skeleton training session. This is Vladislav Herashkiewicz, who suggested, actually, that the IOC wants him to wear a black armband instead of showing the dead on his helmet. And he said, in fact, that there aren't enough armbands to wear, and that those people who have died should be with him while he's racing to experience as he is. So he's in a bit of a battle with the IOC on that, but certainly standing firm at the moment. Well, both of you, lots of newspapers to talk about, more coming up a little bit later on as well. Thank you for now. Let's bring you the news that there have been tributes to the American actor James Van Der Beek, who has died at the age of 48. We'll take a look at that after this.
Liberation Day.
By popular demand, here we are.
Donald Trump. It is quite the story. Wherever it goes, on Trump 100, we go with it.
Can you tell us who you're looking for?
Unbelievable we've come to this.
Are you overstating the reach and significance of this deal?
Not like you said it.
From the UK.
Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
It was 10 feet from him, and all of a sudden the shot's rang out.
People impacted.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Join us wherever you get your podcast.
First Minister, how are you?
Good morning. Good morning.
Nice to see you.
How are you feeling? Looking forward to getting into the parliamentary chamber.
Are you any further forward to making a decision?
No, it's an important day today.
All of the claims were in line with my parliamentary duties, so I'm making that clear to you, Conor.
He was a Scot through and through.
He was a very good politician.
Alex Salmond was controversial, he was a disruptor, but above all, he was respected. Will you resign if you lose this week?
Again, I'm not planning to, of course, lose the vote of no confidence. I'm planning to win that vote of no confidence.
His face said it all.
My intention to stand down as party leader.
This is now a storm with deadly consequences. How are they feeling?
They're a bit scared at the minute.
We've been told to evacuate.
How are you feeling?
Devastated.
Hundreds of homes were wiped out by flooding. I'm Connor Gillis, Sky's Scotland correspondent.
It was probably the darkest time in my life.
Scott is 5 years sober after a cocaine addiction left him close to death. Scotland has a shameful record, worse than England, the worst in Europe.
Why not just say you've failed? Because then you might get more respect from families who've lost loved ones.
This is where one of the UK's most prolific rapists thought he'd got away with murder.
Sky News can reveal that former sex workers had told police he was sexually violent.
My Emma. Free wherever you get your news.
It's over, isn't it?
The Americans say he is Rossi, a fraudster.
This has been one of the most bizarre cases ever heard in a courtroom in this country.
A dangerous murderer.
Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive Andrew Innes after this?
She said she can forgive him, but as long as he's behind bars.
By doing the right thing, it's destroyed your life.
They terrorised me. They intimidated me.
I'm so grateful.
Sky News. The full story first.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you.
So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual.
Mornings with Richard and Frost.
Let's crack on. Let's get started.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist. A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Well, as we've already seen in some of the newspapers, including this image on the front page of The Guardian there, James Van Der Beek, the star of one of the most popular television shows of the 1990s, has died. He was 48 years old, best known for playing Dawson Leary. Did I say that right, Kate?
Yeah.
In the series Dawson's Creek. Let's have a listen.
Aren't you? I have to, otherwise I'll never know.
Just go.
Dawson.
Joey, go. I'm telling you before I take it all back, all right? Just go. Go.
Makes you want to watch, doesn't it? Certainly. Well, the series, which also launched the careers of Joshua Jackson, Michelle Williams and Katie Holmes, was one of the defining shows of the era. Well, his family announced that he passed away peacefully this morning after being diagnosed with bowel cancer 2 years ago. Yes, Michelle Williams caught at the end there. I mean, really sad age to die. Somebody else young dying of bowel cancer. But I know you were a fan of, every single one of the shows?
God, I think me and all my friends watched it religiously every Sunday. Like, you saw the clip there, the Will He, Won't He, him and Joey get together. It was like a show that defined, I think, all teenage girls when I was growing up. Teenagers, all what we thought love would be like. It's just so sad. He announced, I think, last year that he had cancer. I think he was diagnosed the year before. Just died so young, father of 6. Obviously, it's horrific, and just goes to. I think he's campaigned on broadening out screening, which I know that our newspaper has done too. It just goes to show how important getting those checks is.
Well, he turned to acting, I read, at the age of 13, but that was only after suffering a concussion playing football that prevented him from playing for a year on doctor's orders. It went well for him, didn't he? We've got a statement, actually, from his wife. Our beloved James Van Der Beek passed peacefully this morning. He met his final days with courage, faith and grace. There is much to share regarding his wishes, love for humanity and the sacredness of time. Those days will come. For now, we ask for peaceful privacy as we grieve our loving husband, father, son, brother and friend. I mean, 48 is no age, but, a mark left left on the world, certainly in his acting.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, it's no age at all. And as Kate says, I think any one of our generation, I mean, as a boy, I wasn't as interested, but it was you know, it was one of those things where it was one of those things every Sunday on Channel 4, you'd watch Dawson's Creek and think, oh, when am I going to start to look like that? And it turned out, of course, later, because the answer is he's not actually quite the same age. But, yeah, clearly a loving husband and a great human being. And actually, I mean, 48 is... Yeah, that's young, and it shows the importance of screening, and it is very sad. But yeah, a huge influence on lots of people, because yeah, we did all think, oh, when I grow up, I'll be like that. I'll be like Ryan and Seth in the OC, and then turns out actually, of course, you're not. And in my case, it turns out I'm greying so quickly that I'm going to be greyer than Sandy was in the OC pretty soon.
You're making me want to watch all of these. Both of you stay there. Lots more stuff to come in the next hour of our programme, including all the reaction after an exclusive interview that we had today with Sir Jim Ratcliffe, sparking a political row over immigration and certainly demands for him to apologise. Back in a moment.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Tonight on The Wrap, one of the country's richest men sparks a political row after he gives Sky News his verdict on the government's migration policies.
The UK is being colonised. It's costing too much money. It'll cause. Well, the UK is being colonised by immigrants, really, isn't it?
The Prime Minister says the comments to us from the billionaire and one-time Labour backer, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, are offensive and wrong, and he should apologise. But Nigel Farage says Labour can't ignore the changes brought by mass migration. Also tonight, police in Canada name an 18-year-old, born male and identifying as a woman, as the attacker who shot dead 8 people at a school and at a home. Plus,
you have the power to change things, to hold these men accountable, and you're doing the opposite. You're protecting them.
This is so ridiculous.
Angry exchanges in the US Congress as Democrats accuse the Trump administration of a cover-up over Jeffrey Epstein. And
how dare he criticise us? We weren't the ones stuffing government with hypocrites and paedophile apologists.
The Prime Minister is accused of only caring about violence against women to save his own skin as he attempts to fend off more questions about his judgment over Lord Mandelson and Lord Doyle. Well, we discuss the day's biggest stories with Stephen Bush and Kate Ferguson. Plus, a first look at the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers, including coverage of our exclusive interview with Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Well, hello, good evening. Kate and Stephen, welcome to both of you. A political row tonight after one of the country's richest men, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, told Sky News that the UK has been colonised by immigrants who are draining resources from the state. Well, Sir Keir Starmer says those comments are offensive and wrong, but Nigel Farage tonight said Labour can't ignore that mass immigration has changed the character of many areas in the country. Kate, a row, clearly.
Oh, huge row tonight blowing up. And I think that, I would say his language is not acceptable. It is very clumsy. I would never use that word, colonise. But he's raising a point which is very high up a lot of voters' agenda, which is how high immigration is, hit nearly 1 million a couple of years ago, and they want that tackled, legal and illegal. So he might be raising a decent point, but his language has made him score an own goal tonight.
Stephen?
Yeah, look, we should be very clear that colonisation is a violent process in which someone literally invades with an army, takes your life, your land, your liberty. Someone coming, whether it's to run your delivery order, to work in the NHS, to work as a banker in financial services, is just not comparable, regardless of what you think the level of immigration is. It's a distasteful way to talk about people. It's a distasteful way to talk about what happens in the United Kingdom. We should be proud of the fact in this country we are somewhere which is a success story in terms of integration and ethnic diversity, and we manage these things very well here. That isn't to say, of course, we should necessarily want to keep at the levels that we've had in recent years, but that's entirely separate from this use of the word colonisation and these actually entirely false claims about it costing too much money. Because immigrants are working age people do not cost. Working people don't cost any money at all. It's children at the start of our lives, and when we're old and we're claiming the state pension and we have more complex health needs, which is right and proper. But he's completely wrong.
OK, well, plenty of reaction to his use of language, which you've both picked up on, to come. But first of all, let's have a listen to what Sir Jim had to say in that exclusive interview with our economics editor, Ed Conway.
If you really want to deal with the major issues of immigration, with people opting to take benefits rather than working for a living, if you want to deal with that, then you're going to have to do some things which are unpopular and show some courage.
And has this government done that?
No, I think they I don't know whether it's just the apparatus that hasn't allowed Keir to do it, or he's maybe too nice. He's a nice. I mean, I know Keir. He's a nice man. I like him, but it's a tough job, and I think you have to do some difficult things with the UK to get it back on track, because at the moment, I don't think the economy is in a good... You can't afford... you can't have an economy with 9 million people on benefits and huge levels of immigrants coming in. I mean, the UK is being colonised. It's costing too much money. It will cause...
It's been colonised?
It'll cause... Well, the UK has been colonised by immigrants, really, isn't it? I mean, the population of the UK was 58 million in 2020. Now it's 70 million. That's 12 million people.
You met recently with Nigel Farage, didn't you?
I did.
Do you think that they would be a good government if they were to win the next election?
I think Nigel is an intelligent man, and I think he's got good intentions, but in a way you could say exactly the same about Keir when Keir came in. But, I think it needs somebody who's prepared to be unpopular for a period of time to get the big issues sorted out, would be my view.
Well, just quickly, in that interview, Sir Jim Ratcliffe said that the population of the UK was 58 million in 2020, now 70 million, as you heard. But according to the Office for National Statistics, the population in 2020 was actually 67 million, and it was 58.9 million back in the year 2000. Tonight, then, plenty of reaction. First of all, let's hear from the Prime Minister, who's weighed in on what Sir Jim told Jim Conway. There it is. Sir Keir said the comments are offensive and wrong. Britain is a proud, tolerant and diverse country. Jim Ratcliffe, should apologise. But Reform UK's leader, Nigel Farage, this evening, not surprisingly perhaps, has taken a different view, saying the country has undergone unprecedented mass immigration that has changed the character of many areas in the country. Labour may try and ignore that, but Reform won't. Well, meanwhile, the Lib Dem leader, Sir Ed Davey, had this to say in the last hour. Totally wrong, totally out of step with British values. He should apologise now. Well, our chief political correspondent, John Craig, has joined us. John, very strong reaction to this interview by Ed.
Yes, it's the language he used. It's the word colonisation. As Stephen was saying, it means invasion. And you remember it was Suella Braverman who very controversially talked about an invasion of immigrants. And, of course, she's now recently defected to Reform UK. This sounds like the language of Reform UK. We heard Sir Jim there talk about how he'd had a meeting with Nigel Farage recently. He went on to say, actually, he said the country needs someone who's prepared to be unpopular. I don't know if he's talking about Keir Starmer there, because his poll ratings are dire. But it's the language, and it's clear that the Prime Minister wants to pick a fight with Reform UK. And, for example, Number 10 have said, as well as the Prime Minister's tweet, that he said also that his offensive remarks are wrong and play into the hands of those who want to divide our country. That's clearly a reference to Reform UK. At Prime Minister's questions today, he attacked Robert Jenrick for those controversial remarks, which he was recorded making, I think, in Handsworth in Birmingham. I think it was Handsworth, where he said, "You don't see any white faces round here." The Prime Minister attacked that today. Lisa Nandy was on the Politics Hub this evening here on Sky News. She's actually tweeted for the last few minutes saying, "Manchester's a proud, diverse city shaped by waves of immigration that stands tall and rejects division." As Tony Wilson, he was a great impresario, wasn't he? Nightclub owner, I think, in Manchester.
Factory Records, yeah.
That's right. Oh, gosh, how hip you are. Would say, "This is Manchester, we do things differently here." Well, this was Lisa Nandy, MP for Wigan, talking on the Politics Hub here on Sky News.
When it comes to immigration, I think that people deserve an immigration system that they can trust. I think most people are very compassionate, and where people need safety and security, they expect Britain to play our part, and we'll give a warm welcome to people who need to be here.
Yes, Lisa Nandy, Kate, having a bit more of a pragmatic take than some on this issue, because Labour knows only too well what a massive issue this is for your readers and their voters.
Yes, in a way, it's a kind of funny balancing act for PM, and it'd be interesting to see if he pursues this row, because on the one hand, they're actually unveiling some quite tough immigration measures, and they've put Shabana Mahmood over in the Home Office to talk tough and to kind of take Farage on and kind of beat him in that argument. But on the other hand, you know, he wants to kind of brand Farage as a divisive figure, and their whole kind of electoral strategy at the moment is hoping that there's a majority against Farage and that Keir can ride the wave of that. So, you know, it's kind of like a bit conflicted in a way, but tonight they've clearly decided the dust-up is more in their favour.
Yes, the Home Secretary picking up on what Denmark is doing to try to reduce the number of asylum seekers and illegal immigrants and even legal immigrants, which has been the great effort in this country to bring it down, because the nearly a million who came in a couple of years ago, was that too many for people here?
I think, look, ultimately, if you have immigration in the rich world now is essentially where all of our population growth comes from, because very few of us have more than 2 children, which is the number to have population growth. 1 million a year is a level at which, if that were people just having kids, you'd go, look, hey, guys, maybe get another hobby. I think 1 million is too much for a country of our size for its population growth. You do want to have some population growth, otherwise, you end up like London in the 80s, property prices falling, public services in greater labour costs going up. So you do have to strike a balance. But I think the big political picture change here is that a couple of weeks ago, before Morgan McSweeney left Downing Street, the approach from this government was essentially to basically be neutral on the alarming rise of, to have very little to say about people saying that Rishi Sunak was not English, to have very little to say about Robert Jenrick suggesting that you could tell whether or not someone was an integrated member of society just by the colour of their skin. That approach, I don't think it's worked for them electorally, but I think morally as well, it was a huge failure on behalf of the government to have overseen this decline in race relations. When we think about the courage Rishi Sunak showed in kicking people out of his party and talking about his Englishness and how important England was to him, I think we've seen over the past 18 months the damage it does when the Prime Minister of the day quits the field and allows this type of language to be used without condemnation. And I think it's positive for all of us that Keir Starmer has belatedly woken up and joined the battle on this one.
Very interesting. Well, meanwhile, I know you want to come in, but meanwhile, plenty of reaction from the world of football. Sir Jim is co-owner, of course, of Manchester United. The football charity Kick It Out said Sir Jim Ratcliffe's comments are disgraceful and deeply divisive at a time when football does so much to bring communities together. They've worked for decades, clearly, in this sphere. Show Racism the Red Card also said it was deeply concerned by Sir Jim's comments. It said language of this kind echoes narratives that have historically been used to stigmatise migrant communities, fuel division and legitimise hostility towards minority groups. The official Muslim Manchester Supporters Club as well, equally aggrieved by these comments, John. And football is it's a diverse playing field, is it not? And there have been decades of work in the anti-racism area.
Well, the Manchester United game against West Ham this week, there were only 3 English players in the team. The rest were all from countries around the world. And Manchester United, I'm told, have players from more than a dozen countries. Manchester United's own website talks about, it quotes a claim, I think, made by the City Council. Manchester is a city famed for its embracing of immigrants. And the Premier League's website says that the Premier League has become a league of nations on the pitch. So the club, I think, will be embarrassed by these remarks, given what a diverse and multicultural team they have. And you could say that just about every Premier League team. You mentioned Arsenal earlier on. They're the same. Most Premier League teams.
He'll do it again if you ask him.
Yeah. I mean, so many, I don't know what the figures are, but in the Premier League, I think the majority of players are from other countries.
Yeah, the majority of players, and indeed, although, of course, Arsenal, who currently top the league by 6 points, pains me to mention it, but, of course, look, obviously we have, players like Declan Rice and Bukayo Saka, who are, of course, British-born and bred, but, you have, of course, players who boost the quality. I mean, without Zubimendi, I don't think we'd be as secure as we were at the back. And ultimately, I think the Premier League shows the value of controlled, hard-skilled and managed immigration, right? Which is ultimately, of course, that, you don't want to sign any terrible player. I don't think any Arsenal fan would want to sign Nicolas Pepe again. But you do want the value of high-skilled workers coming into the country and supporting our economy, our society, and enriching us in so many ways. And I think one of the big mistakes over the past 18 months by this government has only been to talk about the negatives of immigration. yes, it's important to have control, but it's also important to want to attract the best and the brightest and to talk about the value that brings. And I think we have got the balance wrong.
That's where the mood music of politics was heading, of course. But let's see how the papers are reacting. You've already talked about your readers probably fully in support of much of what Sir Jim Ratcliffe has said. The Daily Star, why don't I kick off with that? It's the one in front of me. Oh, you've got the Express. I'll start with that instead. UK colonised by migrants, claims the United Chief. The Daily Star and the Mirror also leading on that. Let's see what order it comes out in. Daily Star, Manu Jim, racism storm. They are draining resources from the state, and the Mirror as well calls it shameful. Kate, you know, this is a big issue, isn't it, for voters, for readers? And will many of them, you know, kind of listen to what Sir Jim has had to say and actually think, do you know what? Colonisation might be the wrong word, but fundamentally, you know, something needs to be done.
Well, he's saying two things in the full clip.
Yes.
I mean, we've already discussed about how that language is quite inflammatory and probably not the right language to use. But he's talking about two things. Number one, he's saying immigration is too high. You pointed out it hit nearly 1 million the other year. Now, you ask most...
The so-called Boris wave.
The so-called Boris...
Obviously identified as...
The so-called Boris wave. Yeah, exactly, which has done for Boris's reputation politically among lots of people. And you ask if that's too high. You know, most people in this country, most voters will say that's too high and putting a strain on their local areas or their local services, which is just not possible. So, and the other thing he's talking about is this worklessness problem. So this is people of working age who were signed off on sick, and he's saying you need to get them back to work. And actually, I think you find every government minister agrees with him there. There's been a reliance on this sick note culture, and everyone wants to see what they can do to help these people back to work. It's good for them in the long term. So, look, I think my readers will be sympathetic with his message, but they might be worried about the way he's delivered it.
Just quickly on the Boris wave,
yes.
He was a big Brexiteer in 2016.
This is Sir Jim.
Sorry, yes, so was Boris.
We know about Boris.
Sir Jim Ratcliffe, yeah, big Brexiteer in 2016. In an interview with Sky News in 2024, I was with Rob Harris, our sports correspondent, he said, Brexit didn't turn out how people anticipated. So he's one of those Brexiteers who are now saying, oh, it's all the fault of the politicians, it's not the fault of the actual Brexit vote.
Yeah, only this time last night we were talking about European Union nations wanting to start offshoring, Albania or elsewhere. We've clearly passed through the Rwanda plan. But is there, you're looking at what government does on this issue and indeed on the worklessness issue, a sense of impotence from government in tackling, you know, these really big questions about why we're paying so many people benefits and why we're allowing so many people into this country? Yeah,
although it's important to say that these two issues are actually not particularly related,
no.
Because if you come to this country, you can't claim benefits from the benefits issue is one of the native-born population. But the challenge for every country in the rich world is, broadly speaking, when you have more leisure time and more control over what you do, you decide you only want 1 or 2 children. But in order for the population to remain steady, you need the average family to have 3 or more children, because that's replaced. Yeah, if you think about it, it takes 2 people to produce 1 child, so you need them to produce at least 3. And that means the big challenge across Europe, where most of us go, do you know what, I'm fine with 1 or none, is where do you get extra working age people? Well, you get them from overseas. And that, of course, does change the culture, the area, the food in the supermarkets. Change is disruptive. Most of us don't like sudden change. And I think the challenge for politicians is they see on the one hand that voters don't like that change. Then they go, oh, but you also don't like the idea of paying more for goods and services or for labour, which is the other choice you can make. You can go, well, we'll have low or no immigration, but we'll have higher costs, we'll have to retire later. That's the path that Japan have taken for a long, long time. And so what has happened across Europe is politicians have said one thing and done another. They've promised control and gone, oh, but I don't think you want to pay for the costs of control. And that has been really corrosive for public trust. And I think what we really need is politicians to go, look, here are the 2 options. Which one do you want?
Yeah, you're starting to sound like Elon Musk, dare I say, about his, the birth rate issue in that way only. No, but raising the point of that, really big issue in Japan, really big issue in South Korea, even in Spain, 1.3 now is the birth rate, which is not your replacement rate. So this is as you say, it's a major factor.
Oh, yeah, it's a huge challenge across the world.
I didn't mean to suggest anything more than that. Both of you, I mean, all of you. Sorry, John, all of you. Thank you very much indeed for now. Well, should we head to Washington, where there have been shouting matches, quite literally, and extraordinary allegations in Congress as Democrats accuse the Trump administration of a cover-up over the Epstein files. Well, during one of several heated moments, Democrat Pramila Jayapal accused the US Attorney General Pam Bondi and the Trump administration of taking part in a cover-up.
Donald Trump made the release of the Epstein files the center of his political campaign because he thought it would benefit him. Then you got into office, Attorney General, claimed to have a client list, only to then say that there was no list. Your deputy, Todd Blanche, met alone with Ghislaine Maxwell and transferred her to a minimum security prison. And now you continue the cover-up. And I wish that you would turn around to the survivors who are standing right behind you and on a human level,
Chairman,
apologize.
now recognizes the chair. You sit here and you attack the president, and I am not going to have it. I'm not going to put up with it. You know, all they want to do, the American people need to know this. They are talking about Epstein today. This has been around since the Obama administration. This administration released over 3 million pages of documents, and Donald Trump signed that law to release all of those documents. He is the most transparent president in the nation's history.
Well, Kate, extraordinary scenes in Congress there. You really got the sense of how anguished this is making people feel.
Yeah, and one of the things that concerns me is that this is turning into just this kind of blistering political row. While I released the files, when you could have released the files. Well, is Bill Clinton in the files? Is Donald Trump in the files? But at the back of that hearing, and outside giving a press conference later, are the women who say they were trafficked, that they were the victims of Jeffrey Epstein, and they haven't seen justice. They haven't seen the men that have abused them imprisoned. You know, it's only Ghislaine Maxwell in prison. OK, she deserves to be there, but again, it's a woman, not a man. So I just think in this whole political fallout, which has really obviously sent a bombshell through British politics, it sounds a bit trite saying we need to think of the victims, but actually, we don't need to think of the victims. The victims are owed justice.
Well, Pam Bondi wouldn't even turn around and look at them, as was requested, as we saw today, because they have not met members of the Department of Justice, the DOJ, in America. Are any steps being made? And because people are referring to what's happening in Europe, that people are being held accountable here, or questions are being asked of people here at the very least.
Yeah, look, it's a huge contrast. Yeah, I've got cousins in the States, and the point that they keep making to me is, look, they're like, you know, you've got rid of, you know, like, they're like, you know, Lord Mandelson's not going to be a lord anymore. Prince Andrew might not be a prince anymore. Keir Starmer, who wasn't even in the files, might not be Prime Minister anymore because of these files. And they're like, what are we doing? And that's true across the whole of Europe. If you are a European businessman or politician and you're in the files, quite rightly, justice is coming for you. And I think the big challenge for the United States is, look, are they still, as a country, capable of holding people to justice for these horrific crimes? Because the first duty of the state is surely to be able to protect its citizens from crimes as horrible and immoral and awful as these. And at the moment, that is a test that they are, as a political class, failing.
Well, many of those that you mentioned there, Sir Keir Starmer has been meeting the King this evening. We know the royal family and the leader of this nation both caught up, as you said, in the backwash of the Epstein files. We're coming on to that next, in fact. Sir Keir Starmer on the defensive again, in fact, as he is embroiled in another scandal with opposition politicians accusing him of a catastrophic lack of judgment. Back with that.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome, Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you. So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Richard Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
Well, for the first time since that massive tranche of Epstein files was released, the King and Sir Keir Starmer met. It was at Windsor Castle. It was about carers. And the event marking the first time, as I said, since Sir Keir and the King had been seen together since that recent dump of millions of documents, both caught up in their own way, obviously, in the ramifications of this story. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer said he wants to give UK carers equal worth to that given to politicians at Windsor Castle at this reception hosted by the King and Queen. It's been a very difficult couple of weeks for both of them, the King having to step in early this week to suggest that they would help the police in any investigation with regard to Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. And obviously, for Sir Keir Starmer himself, his job became extremely perilous, one might say, at the start of this week. In the meantime, though, before meeting the King, Sir Keir Starmer attempted to fend off a Tory claim that his party is a home of hypocrites and paedophile apologists. After the Mandelson row, he's been under fire for giving a peerage to a former aide, Matthew Doyle, despite that aide's links to a paedophile counsellor. Well, let's take a look at what happened then at Prime Minister's Questions this lunchtime.
The Prime Minister, sometimes likes to claim, as he just did, that he cares about violence against women. The truth is, he only cares about the victims when he's trying to save his own skin. They can shake their heads. We saw it with grooming gangs. We saw it with Mandelson. And now we see it with Doyle. Isn't that what a former prosecutor would call an established pattern of behaviour?
I'm going to take no lectures from the Tories in standards in public life. She defended Partygate for months and months and months. And even now she says it was overblown.
Nobody buys it, Mr. Speaker. Not even the Labour women, because they know he always puts the Downing Street Boys Club first. And how dare he criticise us? We weren't the ones stuffing government with hypocrites and paedophile apologists. The Prime Minister is now telling everyone that he's never lost a fight. It's because he won't step into the ring. He's never lost a fight. He's walked away from welfare reform. He won't stand up to the unions. He won't stand up to China. He can't even stand up to Mauritius. He's had, Mr. Speaker, he's had 3 cabinet secretaries, 4 chiefs of staff, 5 director of communications in just 18 months.
Yes, some strong words there from the Conservative Party leader. Tricky, a second peer, being questioned about links to somebody who was already charged with, with indecent photographs this time. So 2 peers now, Lord Mandelson, Lord Doyle, vetting questions. Stephen.
Yeah, look, I think that 2 things are true at the same time. Firstly, this is a hugely damning verdict on Keir Starmer's political and moral judgment. However, these are 2 quite different cases. There's the case of Matthew Doyle where a friend of his was charged with a crime he later was convicted of, where he had said to him, well, I didn't do it, and he believed him. I think that's a perfectly respectable thing to do when a friend is charged with something. However, if a friend is charged with a horrific crime, you stand by them and they're convicted, sorry, you don't get to become a peer in the House of Lords, obviously. And I think that this is why this is really ultimately a story about Keir Starmer's judgment, because he shouldn't have made Matthew Doyle a peer, even though it's a very...
You think?
Yeah, I think people understandably regard paedophilia, even the possession of images, as one of the most horrific crimes you can commit. And I think even though people would themselves stand by a friend who said they were innocent and would hold them till proven guilty, I think we would accept that once you are proven guilty, then that's a decision with consequences. And I think in the case of Peter Mandelson, when we now know that he continued that friendship, and indeed that had been reported long before he'd continued that friendship after Epstein's conviction, of course that's someone who's not a fit and proper person to be appointed ambassador to the United States. And I think the fact that Keir Starmer and the people who he chose to outsource these decisions to did not understand that does really speak to his judgment.
Yeah, I mean, clearly some very, very serious issues there, passing on of information and the whole paedophilia question. Notwithstanding that, you know, is it a case of not just sort of sins of the father, it's sins of your friends? At what point do you have to abandon all your dodgy friends and the whole of your lifetime's body of work is disregarded because of that moment? I mean, am I being oversympathetic here to how people live their lives?
I think a little, because I think the thing that Matthew Doyle did wasn't privately say to a friend, well, you've told me you deny it, I'm going to privately, you know, give you moral support or whatever, and we'll see what happens at trial. What he did was go out and campaign for somebody who at that point was charged with possession of child pornography. So it just kind of betrays a sort of arrogance. What do you know about that case? You might want to believe in that person's innocence, but that person's been charged with one of the most abominable crimes that someone can commit. So, you know, you can't go around kind of almost dictating what you think the result of that criminal case is, which, by publicly supporting them on the campaign trail, you're basically doing. So I think it's that decision that really had the consequence here. And when you go back to that clip, Kemi Badenoch, at PMQs, you staffed your government, your peerages, with hypocrites and paedophile apologists. That's one of the most horrific things that a Prime Minister can hear about themselves. And that's going to be so difficult for him to shake off. And no wonder he's trying to take a clean broom to everything, because his reputation has been severely damaged by this scandal.
OK. We're going to take a look at all of the front pages now. Thank you for that so far. So let us start then with The Express, and it picks up on that exclusive interview carried out by our economics editor, Ed Conway, and it quotes Sir Jim Ratcliffe and his comments that the UK is being colonised by immigrants. Daily Star also leading on that, describing the racism storm that's erupted following Sir Jim's comments, as does the Mirror, describing those words as shameful, saying there is fury too at the Man United co-owners' choice of words. The Guardian is leading on demands from female Labour MPs for Sir Keir Starmer to appoint a senior woman as his de facto deputy to oversee a culture change in Downing Street. That is also on the front page of the Mail, as the Prime Minister is accused of running a number 10 boys' club. The Times also leads on the Prime Minister, focusing on the controversy around his appointment of Lord Doyle to the House of Lords. The Telegraph claims Labour is keen for closer ties with Europe, with the Chancellor Rachel Reeves saying the government would be willing to cede more powers to Brussels in exchange for a better economic deal. The Eye leads on the growing police inquiry into Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor's links to Jeffrey Epstein. The Sun claims Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor hasn't paid back a loan from his family to settle with his accuser, Virginia Giuffre. We've approached the palace for comment on this story, and Andrew has always denied any allegations against him in relation to the Epstein scandal. The Financial Times reporting that shares in Britain's biggest wealth management companies fell over concerns about a new AI investment tool. And the Metro leads on a prolific train fare dodger who's avoided jail despite not paying for thousands of pounds worth of journeys. So let us delve inside the newspapers then with Stephen and with Kate. And Stephen, we're starting with President Zelensky, who has asked MPs to report by the end of the month on how Ukraine can lawfully hold elections during wartime. This is something that Trump has been pushing him for, hasn't it?
Yeah. But the big picture here is that people in the Trump circle are going, oh, look, you know, you haven't had elections, oh, you know, you're not... Which is... Now, look, we didn't have elections throughout the Second World War and throughout the First World War, right? So... To an extent, a large part of this is about the anti-Ukraine propaganda that circulates freely in MAGA circles. However, given the importance of US arms to Ukraine being able to continue to resist Russian aggression, if they can show that they can hold an election even under highly flawed circumstances, it, of course, is hugely helpful to that issue. But, of course, there are huge challenges in having an election when part of your country is invaded. Again, people in the States go, well, we had ours during World War II. But the United States was at no point invaded during those wars. It's just not comparable. But, yeah, this is why he's having to do this.
OK. And I just want to pick up on a story that I've listened to today and, you know, I found very moving. And it is the Ukrainian athlete from the men's skeleton training session pictured at the Winter Olympic Games in Cortina. And on his helmet, it is Ukrainian athletes who have died in the war. This is Vladislav Heretskyevich of the Ukrainian team, who's in a battle now with the IOC, who wants to wear this helmet, and he's been told he can't because he's not allowed to delve into politics. They suggested he should wear a black armband.
I think this helmet says more in the images it has over it than any of us can say about the war, no matter how many words we were given. I think it's just so morally repugnant of the IOC to try and make him take it off. And, I mean, I don't have very high hopes for the IOC, but I think this is a fitting tribute to his comrades who have fallen on the battlefield and been killed by an invading army led by a tyrant in the name of Vladimir Putin. So, I mean, he should be allowed to wear his helmet. And should just ignore the IOC, to be honest.
We've talked about Starmer, the difficulties had with peerages, vetting and so on. Let's move forward with his story, shall we? The Daily Mail is talking about Labour's women's fury over this second paedophile crisis. We know that he met the Women's Parliamentary Labour Party tonight, and the suggestion or not whether some woman needs to be shoehorned in at the highest levels of government to break up the so-called boys' room and the allegation about that. Has there been a boys' club type feeling, do you think, in the way he's been running Number 10? Yes,
I think there absolutely has. I think throughout Keir Starmer's tenure, not just as Prime Minister but as Labour leader, when you speak to women in the Parliamentary Labour Party, they would say, look, there's a problem of, you know, the boys or the bros or, yeah, this group of male staffers who kind of say, oh, we're tough, we're mean, oh, yeah, we understand what the voters think, oh, whoopsie-doopsie, we've accidentally blundered into not one but two paedophile-related scandals. And Labour women MPs are, I think, correctly saying, look, if there had been a greater diversity of perspectives in the inner circle, this wouldn't have happened. I'm less convinced that another political deputy is what's needed, because there are loads of Labour women MPs. Yeah. What there aren't is lots... Well, there now are in this Downing Street take-up, but what there haven't been for a long time are female aides with the ear of the Prime Minister who are listened to. But they've got two... I mean, are they temporary women, female chief of staffs that have replaced Morgan McSweeney? Is it a temporary thing, or have they got the job?
I don't know if they've got them permanently, actually. All we know is that they're currently doing it jointly.
OK, so women have been inserted at the highest level. So we're talking about The Guardian here. Select female deputy to end Number 10's boys' club in Number 10. Who's come up with this idea, and is it one you support?
So this is Harriet Harman's idea, this idea that I think it was called a First Secretary of State, another effectively deputy to tell the boys not to be so sexist, basically. Look, does Keir Starmer's regime have a boys' club problem? I would say it does insofar as, well, his Labour MPs think it does. His own cabinet ministers, Lisa Nandy's alluded to it tonight, his own female MPs, some very senior female politicians have complained about it, basically since the beginning of this regime. So I think this is an issue he needs to address. I don't like when women are kind of shunted into women's only jobs. As a woman in my professional career, I've always been very wary whenever there's a kind of women's story, and that you get sent off to cover that the men don't. So I don't like this idea that I think can tend to be a bit tokenistic. There are deputies, there's already 2 deputies in Labour at the moment. Lucy Powell, the party deputy, David Lammy, the deputy PM. So I don't love this idea from Harriet Harman at all. But, you know, the most important thing for the Prime Minister and for his regime is to have a powerful, listened-to women at the top table. And if he does that, then he will start to win back the trust of his MPs. What we don't need is some kind of minister for women, women's role in the cabinet.
Can I just get a percentage chance of surviving post-May from both of you? If 100% is obviously the top, what's your percentage chance of him keeping going till July and doing 2 years?
40%, I think.
OK.
I think he'll be around definitely post-May. What, 2 years, did you say?
No, will he get to July? That'd be 2 years.
Definitely.
Really?
Yeah, I think he'll get to July. Oh, sorry, did I say 90%? Yeah, I just can't see them moving so quickly. Wow. It's so hard to topple a Labour Prime Minister. I think we're going to see so many more briefings, probably some plotting, but I think he'll be in here in July.
Goodness me, a week really is a long time in politics, isn't it?
Maybe I'm going to end up eating my hat or something. Anyway.
We'll mark this one, bookmark it. Lots more still to come. We'll be taking a look at the timing of the school summer holidays and more of the papers in just a moment.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Big Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Well, Stephen Bush, Kate Ferguson are still looking at the newspapers with us as well. We're going to go inside, I've forgotten which paper it is, the Eye, apologies. This is Iran on the agenda. The Israeli leader has flown to Washington specifically to keep Trump, it appears, Stephen, on track, because Bibi wants action on Iran, doesn't he?
Yeah, look, this is the thing about Trump is that he really likes small, high-headlined, very winnable military interventions, right? We saw that with Venezuela, right? Very interested in this. And look, the United States military is the finest military machine the world has ever seen, right? So it can carry off these amazing, oh, we've captured and kidnapped Maduro. But the second day where you're going, oh, God, who do we want to run Venezuela? He gets bored. Now, of course, an intervention against Iran is not some in-and-out, you know, capture and move on. And that is very much not the kind of thing that Trump wants. Whereas if you're Netanyahu and you know that, look, you've gone in and mowed the fence, so you've taken out the air defences, you've taken out most of the nuclear...
proxies damaged, you know, left, right, centre.
But you know this is a moment that's not going to last forever. And so you've got to, if you're him, get Trump to commit to it. Can he do it? Probably not. If he can do it, it's obviously this huge Pandora's box, and there's no certainty that Trump would want to stick with it long enough. I mean, I do think this is the... Netanyahu, I think, ultimately is a politician who's always been playing with fire, right? He's been very good at winning military victories, but he's been very, very poor at winning the peace, and I think we're going to see that continue.
Got 2 minutes left, see how many we can squeeze in, including a story I absolutely love the idea of. Ofsted says move the bizarre summer holidays. Now, I've always thought lovely weather in June really gets quite ropey by July and August. What's the suggestion here?
Well, I remember when I was a kid on summer holidays, and I just thought, not that they went on for too long, because you kind of don't want to go back to school, but I would prefer them to be like, you'd get more frequent holidays or something, because that 6-week break, unless you're kind of made of money and get weeks abroad, they go on and on and on. I was kicking my heels in London most of the time.
So Ofsted saying the timing of the school holidays is bizarre. The summer break should be shortened. So children are not taking exams during the hottest time of the year. Experts have called for change since much learning is lost in the 6-week summer break, particularly among children from less affluent homes. That is a very interesting debate. In the meantime, under the weather, the rain could be to blame. Wet and windy days can lower our mood, but there are ways to feel better. This is an article we all need to read, is it not? Don't you think, Stephen? Because actually, I've had enough. I don't know about you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm thoroughly sick of it. I thought that wasn't the way you take action is you, like, find somewhere in the right time zone that's still warm, so you go to Madeira or you go... But, I mean, it's...
Work from the beach.
Yeah, work from the beach. I mean, it is... I love this country very dearly, but there are points in January when I was walking along the canal earlier today and I was just so wet and miserable and thinking, oh, I hate it. So the most important story in any paper.
Yeah, absolutely. But I am loving your mutually, matching autumn vibe colours, actually, to be fair.
Especially coordinated.
I know you like this story, which is the Olympic athlete who confessed having won a bronze. You've got 30 seconds to tell me what's the girlfriend or ex-girlfriend had to say.
Oh, right. So, yeah, this is this Norwegian athlete who's confessed on camera that he's cheated on his other half and she's dumped him and he's sad and he's hoping she'll get back together with him. Well, drum roll please, she says no. She's not getting back together with him. She's not forgiven him. So it looks like he's got his medal, but it's his medal and his tears he'll be going home with, I think.
Oh, dear. Still time. Keep going. Thank you both very much indeed. Stephen Bush, Kate Ferguson, been an absolute pleasure talking through the newspapers and the news with you. Lots more still to come. We've got the sport action from the Premier League as Manchester City crank up the pressure on leaders Arsenal.
Liberation Day.
By popular demand, here we are.
Donald Trump. It is quite the story. Wherever it goes, on Trump 100, we go with it.
Can you tell us who you're looking for?
Unbelievable we've come to this.
Are you overstating the reach and significance of this deal?
Not like you said it.
From the UK?
Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
It was 10 feet from him, and all of a sudden the shots rang out.
People impacted.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Join us wherever you get your podcast.
First Minister, how are you?
Good morning. Good morning.
Nice to see you. How are you feeling?
Looking forward to getting into the parliamentary chamber.
Are you any further forward to making a decision?
No, it's an important day today.
All of the claims were in line with my parliamentary duties, so I'm making that clear to you, Conor.
He was a Scot through and through.
He was a very good politician.
Alex Salmond was controversial, he was a disruptor, but above all, he was respected.
Will you resign if you lose this week?
Again, I'm not planning to, of course, lose the vote of no confidence. I'm planning to win that vote of no confidence.
His face said it all.
My intention to stand down as party leader.
This is now a storm with deadly consequences.
How are they feeling?
They're a bit scared at the minute.
We've been told to evacuate.
How are you feeling?
Devastated.
Hundreds of homes were wiped out by flooding. I'm Connor Gillis, Sky's Scotland correspondent.
It was probably the darkest time in my life.
Scott is 5 years sober after a cocaine addiction left him close to death. Scotland has a shameful record, worse than England, the worst in Europe.
Why not just say you failed? Because then you might get more respect from families who've lost loved ones.
This is where one of the UK's most prolific rapists thought he'd got away with murder. Sky News can reveal that former sex workers had told police he was sexually violent.
My Emma.
Free wherever you get your news. It's over, isn't it? The Americans say he is Rossi, a fraudster. This has been one of the most bizarre cases ever heard in a courtroom in this country. A dangerous murderer.
Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive Andrew Ennis after this?
She said she can forgive him, but as long as he's behind bars.
By doing the right thing, it's destroyed your life.
They terrorised me. They intimidated me. I'm so grateful.
Sky News. The full story first.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you.
So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Richard and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist. A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan had the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Plenty of sport around. Let's get all the details. Here's Jessica.
There's a reason why I've got a Premiership now.
There was a lot of noise around Alan possibly going to Manchester United and then Newcastle.
If you're asking me would I like Alan Shearer here, of course, who wouldn't like Alan Shearer?
Doesn't bother me at all. That's all it is, talk.
There are only two clubs that interested Alan.
I spoke to Sir Alex Ferguson. The temptation to go to Man United was huge.
You name your price, you've got to be prepared to stick to it.
How much is it? Because that was a world record.
It's £15 million, making it virtually impossible for me to leave.
I think there was an inevitability that he would move at some stage.
for United! I will the lads!
We're breaking records. We're giving people hope again.
Be like 725, whose name and number.
I just had to come back home. It was my dream to play for Newcastle and score goals at the Gallagher.
A lot of people probably looked at us and thought we probably needed a couple of centre-halves. Not Keegan.
After all, I'm only a sheet metal worker's son from Newcastle.
If I had to make the same decision again, it would be signed for Newcastle all day long.
Blackburn Rovers are finally back in the big time. Jack Walker's millions and the managerial expertise of Kenny Dalglish are proving a potent combination at Ewood Park these days.
I knew what was happening up there at Blackburn. They were continually spending money. We was building to be successful. Jack Walker just had one idea, which was, this is my hometown club. I'm not interested in too much on the commercial side. I just want them to be a success.
Here's Shearer. He scored on his debut. Alan Shearer, Britain's most expensive footballer, starts to repay the fee with that cracking volley.
Made it hard for myself, haven't I? People are going to expect great things of me now.
Being the most expensive footballer in the Premier League, how important was it for you within your own mind to get off to a good start and start banging in a few goals?
Blackburn Rovers and Southampton Football Club have put that price tag on me. People keep saying to me I'm the most expensive. All right, I am, but I've got nothing to do with that price tag. I can only go out and play to the best of my ability, and if clubs want to pay that amount of money for me, then so be it.
It was Kenny and Ray, obviously, who had decided that they would like to buy him. Ray had him with the England under-21s. He knew what talent was there, and it was at their instigation, really.
The atmosphere completely changed. We'd started signing more expensive players, and it were just little old Blackburn that were doing it. As the weeks went on, more and more arrived. We were getting the most expensive.
Jess, thank you. Weather now.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors Sky News weather.
Well, it will turn drier, brighter, colder into the weekend, but otherwise the dull, wet weather will continue with disruption possible again. A colder start tomorrow, a scattering of blustery wintry showers, bringing snow to northeastern hills.
All Clear Travel Insurance proudly sponsors Sky News weather.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome, Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you.
So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Richard and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.